We should do it in English as far as this class is meant also for students of different studies within this school. And my name is Almudena González, and although of course it sounds very Spanish because I am from Madrid, it sounds very Spanish. However, I teach at Saxion University of Applied Sciences in Deventer in the Netherlands. And within the different models that I teach, my expertise is about law and tourism. And one of the classes that I teach is in a model called destination development, in which we take care at that very model of how destinations are going to be developed in order to turn into a touristic destination. And we consider within this model that the topic of aviation, and specifically the topic of aviation law, is very fundamental and absolutely paramount when we are talking about the development of a certain touristic destination. Therefore, some years ago we started doing this class. It's only one class. I enjoyed it very much, but it's unfortunately one class. I would love it to make a model out of it, but of course they don't allow me. No.
It's just about law, right?
This is about law. I'm not going to go that much into law. It's more about the consequences or of the influence that aviation law has under the idea of destination development. It's an MBA on tourism?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Most probably you can give me a lot of input in this one. So as you see, quite some content. However, I would like to tackle with you what do we understand by aviation law, some basic principles, understanding aviation law as such. I would like to make some reference about different international organizations, different cases related to destination development. 2 examples of airports, that is the airport of Castellón, I don't know whether if you know it.
I don't know.
I will tell you later on. And the airport of Barajas, some lessons learned and conclusions. We have like 1 hour, if I'm not mistaken. I'd like this class to be dynamic, so if you would like also to have like a kind of conversation in between, that would be fantastic. So let's start. Aviation law, we understand that is the branch of law that concerns flight, air travel, and associated legal and business concerns. This is the legal frame of what we are talking when we talk about aviation law. And it is a matter of international law due to its international nature. Of course, that's very obvious, Roberta, because we are talking about an issue that it doesn't depend. We don't fly only within Italy, only within Spain. Worldwide, we cross nations, we cross territories. And therefore, we need a legal framework that is international in order to encompass all the different laws of different countries. And it definitely has an irrefutable role in tourism, and in fact, and you know that very well, for us that we are in this field, aviation has had a major importance in the development of tourism as such. There are some general principles. If I have to tell you about aviation law, we can just fill in this classroom with books and with posters and with flyers, and still I wouldn't be able to tell you everything because it's really based and it's really, really huge. But if I can tell you some general principles of the aviation law, we can say that those general principles are the general principles of a legal discipline, are the basic notions and guidelines that address the legal solution of the many problems that derive from air navigation. Do you like movies? Yes? Do you like movies as well? Do you know the movie The Godfather?
Oh, yes,
yeah, of course. Well, in The Godfather, I remember watching it when I was really a kid, and I remember that one of the characters in The Godfather said, "A lawyer with a suitcase can steal more than 100 men with guns." When we talk about law, we always think about the role of a lawyer that is there kind of making your life difficult and miserable. However, when we have law, those laws are supposed to be there to prevent possible problems, and in case problems come, to apply for solutions. So this is basically about applying a legal solution to very concrete problems. The idea is that the states have the exclusive and absolute sovereignty over the airspace that covers their territories. There is not an international mandate of an organization that is owner, in a way to speak, of the air territory, of the airspace of the different territories. Each country, Italy has their you know that the territory is the soil we put our foot on, but also the airspace and also the...
It's like the sea, no?
Exactly,
Like the sea
exactly,
level, you have
exactly. We tend to forget that it's also about the airspace, but it is in it as well. That defines very much aviation law. Certain rights of the third persons yield in favor of the general interest in air activity. You use airplanes quite a lot, right?
Yes.
Have you ever been searched when you cross the security
Yes. of
control?
course.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
That's
Like
something that
just
we
third
wouldn't
person.
we wouldn't allow that to happen in the street. And if that happens, it's because you want to. But normally speaking, it is not like that. That's why the right that you have for your privacy, for the integrity of your own body, you let it behind, whether you like it or not, the moment you're going to cross a security line, because that right is less important than the right of possible safety concern. The air activity cannot remain inactive as its activities serve the general interest. Among others, to ensure connections between distant locations. Do you remember 9/11?
Yes.
I remember one of the most shocking things that happened in 9/11. Roberta, I don't know how old are you, but
Yes.
we are conscious. We were conscious back the day.
I remember.
You remember it well as well. I remember one of the most shocking things was the image of the airspace of the United States and how minute by minute all the planes that were flying were disappearing from the screen because they were canceling the air activity within the
In the space.
exactly, because there was a very obvious safety and security issue. It also happened some years ago, I don't remember, maybe Italy was affected by that as well for sure, the ash cloud in 2010.
No, Italy wasn't. No, but we had problem with Etna, with the volcano.
Of course.
So,
Oh,
I'm
you are
from
relative to
Sicily,
that.
So sometimes happen even in Sicily, so they close all the air and the space activity, even the helicopter, no one can fly.
You're really in the middle of it then.
Exactly.
So you're very familiar to that, and I can imagine that a lot of times they cancel the activity.
Yes, sometimes straight away they cancel everything, so they close everything and no one can fly.
Exactly, exactly. Normally speaking, that goes against this principle. This principle says that the air activity should, that you know it by heart, really by heart, living there.
But I remember the one you were talking about.
Yeah, it was really
Like
quite
friends of mine
something.
fly there and they stay. They remain.
We had a group back the day flying, they were visiting Madrid for a study trip and they couldn't come back. They stayed 1 week longer in Madrid, which I don't think they really experienced it as a disaster. But in fact, they couldn't, and a lot of flights were canceled, even leading to a reimbursement of the ticket, of course.
So I have one question.
Yeah, of course.
Aviation law is not about the company. It's just over the company, over each single
Always
company.
over the company. Always over the company.
So there is an organization, I don't know, an institution. Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
we're going to
Okay.
tackle that a little bit,
Perfect.
indeed. But that's a very important thing because we tend to think that airports are about airlines. Airports are about airlines, of course, also about the passengers, but it's more about the institutions and all the regulations that are trying to regulate the very much activity that happen in that very airport. All these things are above any kind of decision of the company. The only reason why an airline can cancel their activities because there are serious security and safety concerns. That is the only moment in which a certain airline can cancel its activity. And in that case, that is let me put it like this, really like the conditio sine qua non for the flying activity. The air trip must be completed. Literally, if they tell you, I take you from A to B, well, let's hope it's not in the middle of it. Let's hope so. But also the fact that if it's cancellation or there is a delay, still the airline has the obligation to take you from A to B. So it's also one of the principles. And this is also very important. The compensation of the liability of the airlines is limited. I don't know what happened in Italy, but for example, when we're talking about liability and you go to a tribunal because you have been damaged by a certain action of a third person, the judges can establish what is going to be the compensation. However, in international aviation law, there are certain standards, certain amount of money that you receive in case of cancellation, in case of delay, And that is in order to harmonize all the different laws. It's very concrete, that liability, and only in case of certain cases could be a little bit more overseen.
I have a
Tell me.
question about that.
Yeah, of course.
It's about the insurance or not, for example?
Yeah, also.
So if I do not have an insurance, I can be refunded the same.
Yeah, because we have to make a difference.
General, no.
Yeah, they have to be two different, because I can imagine that you have booked online many times tickets, always, and we don't go to travel agencies anymore. No. But in a certain moment, they tell you, click here if you want an extra insurance. And the extra insurance, they tell you, if you pay €10 more, you have an extra insurance in case of cancellation and this and this. That is the extra insurance that you as passenger can pay. However, you also have the insurance that the airline is obliged to have anytime. Exactly. So it doesn't matter, still, even if you don't have that insurance, if there is a cancellation of your flight, or there is a delay of your flight, still the airline is obliged to give you, even though you haven't clicked on that option.
They have to bring me to
Exactly. And in case they cannot, they have to give you compensation or try to find another way to take you there. If possible, we'll tackle also a little bit more the case of the ash cloud, or even we can do it now. In the case of the ash cloud, was that unpronounceable name of that volcano in Iceland. That was really unpronounceable, very difficult. And what happened is that many flights, thousands of flights, were canceled in the north of Europe, but also in the south of Europe. And in that moment is a major concern, is something that the company cannot do anything about. It's about safety, it's about security. However, it's a nature disaster. Nothing can be done. So in that moment, the company, the airlines, are only obliged to reimburse the money of the ticket. However, some companies were also allowed to pay also for the accommodation and food in case of need. So certain passengers got that reimbursement, and they also have the accommodation, but some others not, because the airlines were saying, wait a second, that is not our problem, that's purely bad luck, nature, you cannot do anything about it. And also you have the passengers that were saying, but it's not my fault either. So that is quite something. That is quite.
I think it's really difficult to handle, because people are writing and say, I bought it, I know it's not my fault, but it's neither your fault, so
of course.
I'm paying for a service, so
exactly.
That's the point.
And the service has to be provided.
Exactly.
I mean, what we see in here with the service is that indeed when you develop a product, or you provide a service, there is a certain degree of responsibility, because among other things, you have to provide it. So the airline has to try to help to at least to complete the trip.
I think in this place, I don't know, like for example in Sicily we have a volcano, you a plan for handle the risk of the disaster, of natural disaster, because you know there is a volcano that is active, so this should happen, so you know how to handle in this case when there is a problem. So this one I don't understand really. So I know it's nature, but you know that you have a volcano.
And that is really risk management.
Exactly, how to handle this risk. I'm not talking about disaster, I don't know, a bomber. I'm talking about the volcano that you know that there is and is active, and this should happen. Not impossible, one time a year.
But,
so
but it is quite something once a year.
Yes.
It is quite something.
So
no, but I can imagine, I mean, because of, we are not talking a very remote place that you cannot, you are really in Italy, really in a very accessible, so it should be accessible place. So you see, it's very much connected.
Accessible and should be like, not safe, but you know, okay, there's a disaster, I can handle with the accommodation, or with by train, go to Rome, for example, because I know Italy, so you can have a train, go to Rome and have your flight, guaranteed just in case.
Yeah.
Because it takes like 2-3 days, it's not 1 hour.
Exactly.
When happens, so.
But if you're a tourist and you're there just visiting, then you have another kind of issue.
Of course.
And of course, the airlines in that case, they should really provide that. But that's the thing also that happens with airlines. They are not evil, except for Ryanair that is evil. But the airlines, they of course, it's a business. And they also work with the human factor. At the end, if you have a claim, for example, because someone broke your suitcase while boarding or in between transfer, and it's a major reparation that you have to do in the suitcase, you have two ways. Or you make a claim and you lose a lot of time, probably some money, and some months later you might get some compensation from the company. Or you said, you know what, I'm on holidays, I just want to go, I don't mind, I will buy another suitcase, it was already old. So the human factor delimits very much how much we're going to claim to the airlines.
Yes. I think also it's the target, because if I'm flying with Ryanair, I'm a kind of clients. If I'm flying with Alitalia or Emirates, I don't mind, maybe, who knows.
Exactly. But what you're saying is really important in order to delimit it as well. How great has been, or how damaging in a way, but also very good, the incursion of low-cost companies, low-cost airlines within the tourism world.
That's true.
And how it has, because what you're saying is very much, is really targeting a kind of customers that is not going to be targeted. The target for Ryanair is completely different than KLM or Alitalia, for example. It is very, very, very different. You were asking me who is kind of above this airline. Yeah. Well, because of the international nature of aviation, we have different organizations. We have international organizations, European organizations, and regional organizations. So the international organizations, we have, for example, the International Civil Aviation Organization, there are states, the International Air Transport Association, that is IATA, and it's about airlines, and they have different kind of obligations. For example, ICAO gives recommendations. ICAO is a United Nations special agency, and they can only give recommendations. It's not mandatory, but the persuasive nature of ICAO allows the countries to follow their recommendations. Let me put it like this. Nobody wants to have an air catastrophe in their country because they haven't followed the technical recommendations of ICAO. And IATA is for airlines, but they are also given recommendations in procedures, in safeguard, etc., etc. For us, it is interesting when we're talking about the European Union. The European Union has a major role within aviation, and of course we're talking about the European Commission and European Union, the European Civil Aviation Conference, the Joint Aviation Authorities, European Aviation Safety Agency called the EASA, Eurocontrol, that I think we have all heard about them, and the European Air Traffic Control Single European Sky. When we talk about the European organizations, we are talking about states and airlines. And in this case, when we are talking about European Union, those are really mandatory. Those are not only recommendations, they give recommendations, but basically they also give directives and they also give regulations, and those are mandatory to be followed by the different states. I'm not going through all of them. Normally speaking, in my class, I talk about ICAO, IATA, and EASA because they are the ones who have the bigger amount of weight. And now I'm not going to go too much because of time issues, not so much about their functions, but if you have any kind of questions, of course, please post them. And of course, the regional organizations are the ones that per country, per continent, or per region is going to take all the mandates of the different organizations, putting together directly deliverable in the states, in the countries. Oh, that's funny because the students normally don't know about it. You know that in our ticket we have like different kind of codes. So for example, if you're flying to Barcelona, in the ticket you have
BCN?
Yes.
That's the IATA code.
Yeah, that is the IATA code, exactly.
So I'm not learning.
Really? Really? Oh, that's funny.
Yes.
And for
the code of the airport.
and what is for Sicily?
It's CTA for Catania, PLA for Palermo, I think, but I'm not sure. I don't remember.
It's funny because, yeah, normally speaking, unless you really dig into it, yeah,
yes.
You don't know. Well, the ICAO codes are divided by geographical zones. And for example, United States is K, C for Canada. We have Northern Europe with an E, South Europe with an L. So for example, if we're taking Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, have you ever been in Amsterdam?
Yes.
Nice city.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a great country as well.
Yes,
It's a great, great country. And if you go more to the east, you have a completely kind of different kind of country. So for example, the Schiphol would be EHAM, that would be E for Northern Europe, H for Holland, and AM for Amsterdam. Don't never say to a Dutch person, oh, you're coming from Holland, because they will tell you, no, Holland is a province. I'm coming from the Netherlands. That's one of the first things that I learned when I was in the Netherlands. And as you know, these are the IATA codes that are completely different. IATA and ICAO, they are both busy with two different kind of things. We're talking about security when we're talking about the technical procedures. For example, we know that every time an airplane is about to take off, the time before is for the authorities of that airport to check the airplane, to check all the technical issues, whether if they have a problem or not. If there is a minor sign that it could be a problem while flying, then that flight is canceled. And all those standards are international. Be sure that the way they do it in Rome is the same way, it should be the same way that they deal with it in New York. And in that respect, we do connect it more with destination development when we connect it with countries that are in the process of developing themselves. This takes money as well. The fact of a government who's going to invest in infrastructure, but also invest in the professionals in order to provide them, in order to provide their airports with a suitable set of experts that are going to give, or they are going to control the airports, control the aircrafts, that takes a lot of money. So logically, there is a difference between the countries that are fully developed as destination and the ones that are about to be developed. But we also talk about security. And when we're talking about security, then we're talking about all those things that we have seen in the newspapers. Hijackings, sabotage, terrorism acts, accidents as well. We have security and we have safety. And ICAO and IATA, they work both under those two parameters. And I would really like to tackle the role of the European Union and its influence around the world. Well, you know it very much as well as being a European citizen. We're living right now in the moment in which we're living in the middle of the Brexit post-era. Who knows what is going to come? Italy, you have just voted as well.
Yes, it was not really good, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I mean, all around the world is not nice moment about political ones. So.
Yeah, because indeed, it's very turbulent.
Iran, America.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very turbulent. Very turbulent.
Russia, Italy, now Brexit, and who knows?
It might bring something good. Maybe we are in a time of controversy in which it might bring a reaction to that. Could be as well. Let's hope that. Let's hope that as well.
Human, I hope so.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so indeed. But for example, with this thing, I don't know how it is received in Italy. And for me, it's a little bit different because I'm Spanish living in the Netherlands, so it's a little bit in between two different worlds. But I'm very in favor of the European Union. And for me, Brexit has been, like for many of us, really bad news. Very bad news indeed.
In London.
Back the day.
Yes, when they voted for Brexit, I mean, they even don't know why they were voting.
Yeah.
Young people, they voted and they don't know, like old people, for wrong reason. That's the point. That not they had a wrong quotation, just for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
Like the same is happening now in Italy. The people who vote in Italy, I didn't have the chance because I cannot, but they vote for the wrong reason because there is no choice. There was no choice. I say I vote for the opposite just because I don't.
Because there are a lack of options. Yeah.
So that's the problem. And now Italy crashed because we are going back.
Yeah.
In the history, we didn't learn anything, so we are going back.
Yeah.
And this is what's happening with Brexit. I'm in favor, of course, of European Union because it's good, but they handle it in a wrong way.
No, absolutely. There's a whole debate about it. I completely agree.
Because if you look at European Union, we have Spain, now they have the crisis, Italy the same, and Greece the same. So this is not anymore European Union when you have only the north of Europe really strong.
Yeah.
So let's see.
There is a whole debate, and specifically, I mean, for me, it's very easy or very human as well. Not easy, but I want to put it more human. When there is a crisis, we always focus on the things that are going bad naturally. And I think it goes by countries. And in Italy, indeed, what you have just said, there's the feeling of a step back. The good thing of Europe is that we can have a common set of things, a common set that make us, I don't like to use the word stronger because it sounds like over someone.
I was thinking the same. I mean,
yeah.
We are stronger because we are all together.
Yeah, exactly.
In the world,
exactly. And that put us in a place of the world after many tragedies that we have had about 2 big wars and a lot of conflicts in between. And that's also connected to this. Is really, for me, is kind of this is the proof that the European Union works. In aviation, they do have a very important role, and of course you have to be critical, and of course you have to see how things could have been done in another way. But the thing is that we have certain elements that make it really, that word that maybe we don't want to use, but stronger.
I think that's the only one.
It is the only one. It is the only one. So regarding aviation, it is important because the European Union include a common policy in the sphere of transport. And again, the key word here is safety. That is a word that I have repeated already many times. And I have this class also yesterday and this morning. I don't know how many times I said it already, Roberta. Many times. And this is really important. The European Union exercises the power to ban air carriers from operating within Europe. For example, if there is an air carrier of a certain country, not within the European Union, within the European Union as well, but from another country in the world, in Africa, it could be United States, although it doesn't happen, but in another part of the world, and the European Union through EASA has the impression that either way, that country do not follow the procedures or the standards the way they should, that there are serious concerns about the safety in that airspace, or perhaps because there is a very concrete airline that is very insecure, then they have the power to ban that airline to cross the territory of the European Union. To cross. Not even to land it, not even to take off, even to cross. And that is quite something. They cannot allow those kind of airlines to enter the European Union. And also the European Union might give recommendations to its citizens in order not to travel to certain countries due to doubts of the safety in the airspace of a certain country. Some years ago, there was, for example, many cases, but there was a case of Zambia. Zambia is one country in the center of Africa, and Zambia, unfortunately, they, at the very same time that they were making huge improvements and really focusing on developing tourism in order to attract more visitors, they had the bad luck to be included in the blacklist of the European Union. However, there were not very major concerns about safety. There were things that were really able to solve, but that had a consequence because on the one hand, they were trying to develop themselves as a touristic destination.
And European blocked them, so
block it in a way, exactly. They were exactly that. All the efforts that they were doing in one side were blocked on the other side. The good thing about this, I think I have it here. The next one. The good thing about here is that when these kind of things happen, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it later on, is that also the authorities provide help, ICAO as well as international organization, but also EASA, provide them with experts in order to take airlines out of that list, because that list, the less airlines that are on that list, the better it is for the whole international community. So the European Union, in that respect, so this agency has regulatory and executive tasks in the field of civil aviation safety, and among other issues, they control the state members, airports, operations, and procedures. From that could come the inclusion into the list, and they also provide certificates of airworthiness. Airworthiness is literally whether if an aircraft can fly or not. That is simple. And at the very beginning of the aviation law, airworthiness was the only thing to be tackled. Can it fly? Yes! Oh God, it cannot land. Damn it, but it can fly. And this is often is a fact, and it is like that the European Union's strong measures have been translated into the following fact, that with 1/3 of the global traffic, only 10% of accidents occur in the European Union. It sounds like a lot still to me. Yeah, it does.
I don't know there, but it sounds a lot. It was like 0.01%.
Yeah.
It's 10%.
It's 10%, but it's not accidents with result of death.
But accident.
Puede ser, yeah, it could be, for example, an emergency landing, or there is a little problem with certain technical device.
Could happen.
Could happen. And but that thing that you said that could happen, that's something that maybe we can keep it in mind when we're talking about aviation.
Yes. If you go by car or walking, you have like 7% of accidents, and we are only 10, so you need a little bit of luck.
Yeah, it's not that bad. And 1/3 of the global 1/3 of the global traffic, it is quite a lot as well. So this is the kind of standard airworthiness certificate that you can find, and it's the fitness of an aircraft to fly when it meets the minimum conditions laid down in this type of certificate. So for each kind of aircraft, you have a very concrete kind of certificate. If an aircraft doesn't have this certificate, they cannot fly. It is designed and construction in accordance with the specific certification codes, and an airworthy aircraft is the one that can fly. As simple and as beauty as it is.
So we're talking about a single aircraft or the company that has
a single aircraft.
So each of them
they should have that certificate.
Okay. And also the small one, like the charter.
Anything that flies.
Just military apart.
Military, they have also their own rules and regulations, but they have also very much the equivalent to this as well. When we're talking about military law, military aviation, military even music, it is completely different. It is two sets of different legal frames, but also very, very exquisite in the detail of the procedures as well.
So, for example, if there is a military, they need to ask the permission to the civil airspace to cross through? I don't know.
No, that's not necessary. It depends on what.
Okay.
What they have to ask is, it depends. If it's of the same country, they have their own norms and regulations and their own permission to fly within the country, of course. If it's a military aircraft from another country, then they should really ask. If it is not authorized, then it could be a problem. Could be a problem. Indeed. So we have the EASA blacklist of air carriers. It is not officially called like this. It is called the European Union list of banned aircraft, so it's a little bit less dramatic. But this list provides now and then with a blacklist of air carriers banned within the European Union. The last list is from November last year, so it is quite recent. And the blacklist of air carriers banned in the European Union, what I told you, and includes airlines from countries with safety concerns due to alleged poor maintenance and regulatory oversight standards on the part of the European Union, preventing them to enter in the airspace of any state member. Additionally to this, so this is the European authority that can give this blacklist, but also, for example, if let's say that we are in Barajas, and the tower control of Barajas, not the tower control, but the authorities, AENA, in Barajas, decide that a very concrete aircraft of a very concrete airline is not suitable to fly, and that has happened with different aircrafts of that very concrete airline. The Spanish authorities can extraordinarily take the measure of banning that airline from the Spanish territory. This is very exceptional because, of course, EASA is above that prohibition, but if they see that there's something that might have a consequence exactly for security or for safety, they can do it. And this is what I was telling you about. It could be serious doubts about the diligence of the country in control functions or serious concerns about the safety of a certain air carrier. So far, so good?
Yes.
¿Sí? ¿Te parece bien así como, sí? It's a good
sí,
way?
Sí,
Yeah?
me encanta.
Nice. If you Google it, it's interesting to see. Because if you Google it, what you have is literally a list of, I don't know how many pages.
Really?
Pages. So you have, on the one hand, the name of the legal entity of the air carrier, the air operator certificate, whether if they have it or not. So sometimes you have the certificate code, and sometimes you have unknown, which is something.
Wow.
Exactly.
A roulette when you took it.
There you go. And then you have the ICAO airline designation number and the state of the operator. So in these 4 columns, of course, each airline, each country, they get a much complete report on why they have been included into this list. But this list already offers a lot. And you as professional of tourism, if you, for example, work in a tour operator, and there comes a customer that wants to contract with you a package travel. And they are, I don't know, whether, for example, making a trip around Vietnam or India, for example. And within India, they want to also move from city to city by plane. And you arrange everything, you arrange the tickets with the airlines, etc., etc. If by any case that airline is included in the blacklist and you don't notify the customer that this airline has been recommended not to fly with by the European Union, and something happened, the civil subsidiary responsibility of the tour operator where you're working in is penal. And it could be the end of the tour operator as such, because if you have to face a civil case or even a penal, in this case it would be a civil case, not a penal case, that could be the end for a company. There is, for airlines, normally speaking, when there is an air catastrophe related to that airline, it is killing. It happened in the year 1999 with the Concorde. There was a flight, Concorde was flying between Paris and New York in a record time. And short after...
The jet.
Yes.
The supersonic one.
Exactly, that one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, something, it was ridiculous. It was from half of it. It was in the 80s was very, very, very famous, and the 70s as well. And they took off, and a little bit after taking off, one of the motors went in flames, and it crashed, and all of them died. That was the end for Concorde. Some years ago, we had in Spain, I don't know whether you knew it, the case of Spanair. And Spanair was a flight that was in August 2008, if I'm not mistaken. I remember because I was very pregnant. And it was a plane of Spanair traveling to Gran Canaria, if I'm not mistaken. And after taking off, short minutes after taking off, it also crashed down because of technical issues. That was the end for Spanair. Additionally, there was a civil responsibility for Spanair, but there were also some penal responsibility and penal liability for the people who made the technical control of the aircraft in Barajas. That has led to indemnization, that has led to compensation, and that has led not only to the huge tragedy for the persons that were there, but also for the families, but also to the end of an airline. So this provides a lot. And also for what I'm trying to do, you're much farther than you're a professional already of tourism, but when I'm talking to my students about this, I tell them this is why it's important. It's not only because, oh God, it is a procedure from the European Union. It's that you can really make a mistake in this one if you're a tour operator, and you don't, the only thing that you have to do is to inform.
Yes, of course, and one time you inform, you don't have any more responsibility. Say, I told you, if you will take it, it's your own
It's
risk,
up to you, exactly.
I'm not any more responsible.
Exactly. But that thing that you're saying, the way they inform, and I have told you, and even better if it's black and white.
You should
exactly. You have signed it as well.
I don't remember it. What should we do now?
Exactly. Or you didn't tell me.
Exactly. I know this happens usually with everything, and so.
It does happen, but it's in order to limit as well the civil responsibility, and that is extremely important when we're talking also for any kind of activity within tourism. That's very clear as well. I talked about it also yesterday. One of the classes that I have, I think it was with second-year students, third-year students. It was more about law and tourism as such. It was also very interesting because we get more into compensations and all that. And they were, I got my luggage lost, and yeah, once I was delayed, but it was not really delayed. So we connect to all this because we know what it is about. so a little bit more about the blacklist, because I want you to see how important it is. The principle of GTC, that is, it works as a prevention tool. If you don't want to be within, or you want to be on that list as country or as an airline, you're going to do as much as possible in order not to be in that country as, not to be in that list as any of those issues. And the list also works as a motivational tool towards countries that might have problems regarding safety and they want to improve themselves. But also, if you're on the list also provides you with help. What I told you, experts can go to the country, help the people that are working in the country in order to improve the procedures and standards. And indeed, it's hardly impossible to have a 100% trustworthy list. What do you think? Why is the reason?
One second, I need to understand properly the question because it's something that I don't understand.
100% security on that list.
What's the meaning of
Absolutamente segura. Que sea una
okay. I don't know. I mean, you don't know what should happen, and you cannot be 100% sure what's happening with the aircraft. That's the only point. You can have all the check, all the safety rules, but there are accidents. If it is an accident, could happen.
Yeah.
You cannot be 100% sure.
Exactly.
That's the point.
Exactly.
You can enter the risk. You can try to do your best.
It still could happen. Exactly.
It's like when the birds just stroke into the
motor.
Engineer.
It can happen, exactly. And it's also because but what you're saying is extremely important. Those kind of things happen, and a part of that, from the moment that they publish this list till now, they can also be on other airlines that are not included. In Spanish we say, son todas las que están, pero no están todas las que son. All of them that are here are dangerous, just to matter of speaking, but not all the ones that are dangerous are on the list. So, but it's also regarding the fact, and I think what you said is also very important, but it's also because we have to trust, or the European Union have to trust in the information that is given by the authorities of the different countries. If you have countries that are more problematic regarding the bureaucracy or the communication between the different instances of a certain regulatory activity, that could lead that the information is not so easy to get gathered.
The work, the job is made by people. And people can make mistakes.
It
was like the accident that happened in Germany, flight from, I don't remember, it was from Spain to Germany. Like
German wings,
I mean, it's from people, so people is always a question mark.
Yeah.
That's the point in all the jobs. You can do all the instruction, but if I don't know, I'm distracted because there is a butterfly, and I say, oh, the butterfly, and I forget to do something.
There's a mistake. Yeah.
There's a mistake.
And that case that you're talking about is very, very, very relevant within aviation law, because it's the case, if I'm not mistaken, you're referring to the case of German wings that flew from Barcelona to Düsseldorf.
Exactly.
That one?
Düsseldorf, I don't remember.
Yeah. And in that case was because the co-pilot that crashed the plane. Yeah, he had a unfortunate. Yeah. Well, the problem with that, it is a tragedy, and I can also imagine what kind of tragedy it is for not only for the families of the people in the plane, but also for the family of the pilot.
Tragedy in the tragedy.
Added more tragedy to the tragedy, indeed. And in that thing, what the problem that they are having right now in the tribunals, it was 4 years ago already. The problem was that. The relatives of the victims, what they are saying at this very moment, wait a second, so there was a pilot who was suffering from a severe depression with psychotic attacks, with attempts of suicide. How come that Lufthansa, that is the mother company of German wings, didn't tackle that in the psychological controls that they do to their pilots? And Lufthansa is what they are saying is, we didn't know about that.
But they do tests.
Exactly.
They do tests.
They do tests.
I don't know how many times per year, but that pilot, they should be checked for the job they do.
Exactly, and that is going to lead, and then we're talking about responsibility, exactly, because they have negligence, and that is going to cost them quite some money. Some of them already in the tribunals. Although Lufthansa has already reserved, I think it's 300 million euro of insurance to pay the families. But that's one of the things. And another thing is that the problem was that the co-pilot was locked himself up with nobody in the cabin.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but you know what happened? Because that's funny, because I also told it to the students here yesterday and today, and it was because a lot of airlines was mandatory for them not to leave anyone alone in the cabin, because these kind of things happen, but it could happen as well that the pilot have a heart attack or faint, something. So a lot of airlines say, well, a second person has to be in the cabin with the pilot or the co-pilot. However, other airlines, they are saying, yeah, perfectly fine. But if someone has the attempt to crash a plane, a second person is not going to avoid it. And you're putting into cabin someone that might also have bad intentions. So not all the airlines have taken this as a it's complicated. It's a human factor, you were saying.
It's a little bit complicated because, I mean, there are two people, different people. So
Yeah.
I think they both think the same.
Yeah.
That the one struck themselves against a mountain. So, I mean, it should be like 50% of probability.
At least, yeah, at least that is going to be, yeah.
Minds, so.
Exactly. It's very difficult. And I think what you're saying is that mistakes happen, of accidents happen. That is a human factor as well. Well, why is this so important? Because flying is a kind of little conclusion, because flying is a tourism matter, and we hardly understand traveling without flying. Obvious. As an international phenomenon, it needs to be regulated. Experience has told us the importance when we're talking about safety, and the economic development of a country depends on how accessible this country is.
Absolutely.
It's common sense.
Economic development, I think about Sicily, we have this program. A flight costs like one way from all Europe like £100, 150.
That is what, that is a lot.
It's a lot. With £300, I go to Costa Rica. I put £100 more if I go and check there, with some stopover maybe around the world, but I cannot go to both way for £300 to Sicily from Barcelona, for example.
But that is, I didn't expect that.
Yes.
And what is that doing to the city?
Sorry?
What is that doing to the region?
About airports, we have Palermo, that is the capital, and we have Catania. These are the two big. Then Ryanair, they use the spot of a military airport.
Ah, yes,
was in
yeah,
Corrió,
as in
now
Germany,
they
yeah.
closed it. I don't know what's happened. And here we are, the Sicily. That is not a small island, and we pay a lot for a flight. And even if I go to Milan or to Netherlands, okay, sometimes I have offer with this, but they are offer. But the standard price is this one. But it's a lot. So.
It is a lot of money. I didn't expect it, because you can fly into other places in Italy quite cheap.
Of course, if you go to Pisa or to Rome or Milan is the middle of Europe.
Yeah. It is.
Italy, and you can fly cheap.
Yeah.
To go to Sicily, that already is an island. I mean, it's really, really impossible. Even Sardinia is cheaper sometimes than Sicily. That is really.
And it's even farther, yeah.
Of course. So sometimes I think it's political.
But I can imagine that is having a lot of consequences for the economical development of the locals as well.
Of course, because if I have to choose between a flight of £300 to go to 200 to go to Sicily and 300 to go, I don't know, to Greece, I will go to Greece.
Obviously.
It sounds different. It sounds a little bit more, you know?
Yeah, but what you're saying is something extremely important. Extremely important. How happy, I'm going to use the air bunnies, but how happy the neighboring countries can be, or the neighboring destinations, when there is a destination that is not so developed or so accessible even.
I don't know, but sometimes I think about that. This is the airline, because, for example, why there is the tourism so developed from Germany to the Canary Islands? Because there is the flight.
Of course.
That cost me £50. If I go to Milan, it costs me £100.
Yeah, of course.
The tourist from Milan, it's concentrated in Greece. That cost me £50.
Of course.
This is really interesting, I think.
And very political, what you have said as well.
More political, and Ireland, and something about accord, but I don't know. Accord? Yes.
Agreements, yeah, it is, yeah.
Because it's impossible. I don't know.
Well, you have to think, we were talking about, in the class before, we were talking about the case of Ryanair. I'm very much against Ryanair as a customer. I understand how good it is for students, for example, to be able to afford low-cost companies. I don't understand why me, myself, and I use low-cost companies when I have another economical power than a student. So I do see a difference in that one. For example, Ryanair, in Sevilla, one of the teachers here, Jose was referring to the case of Sevilla. In Sevilla, the passengers of Ryanair, they cannot use the finger or even a bus to go from, or shuttle to go from the plane to the terminal. So they have to go crossing for a bit the line, and they have to go a little bit even outside of the airport in order to get to the terminal. And then the airport authorities, AENA, in Sevilla said to our Ryanair, no, you cannot do this because this is extremely insecure. And then Ryanair said, no problem, we leave the destination. We don't fly to Sevilla anymore. And Sevilla said, okay, let me think about it.
Of course, because they're going to lose a lot of passengers in some way.
Low-cost companies are deciding a lot.
I don't know, I think it could be like the same case with Airbnb for hotels.
Exactly the same.
There should be some basic rules.
Mm-hmm.
Some basic. If you want to add this, you have to pay the tax.
I cannot agree more.
Exactly. I think the same is with Ryanair. I sometimes fly with Ryanair because Ryanair fly to Palermo for 30 euro. I fly to Palermo or to Catania with Alitalia with 100, 200.
Of course, it's completely different. Of course.
At least I need A to B.
Yeah. No, but I think what you're saying, and I think I'm going to show you, because what you're saying is exactly what happened I wanted to talk to you about Castellón, but I think it's more important that I talk about this one, because what you're saying is extremely important. It would be ridiculous to pay, at the beginning of the low-cost companies, it was either you fly to London for 100 euro with a low-cost company, or you fly to London with Iberia for almost 300 euro. You had to be stupid. Well, no, not stupid. That's not true.
A little bit crazy. I mean, it's a waste of money if you are not rich.
You give it a try at least. You give it a try. And low-cost companies, in my opinion, they get away with murder. They really do very much what they want. But it is something that it is like that. What you're saying is true. You have. It's the power of offer and demand. If you have exactly the same kind, if for you the service at the airplane is not that important.
I think it's from the people who's gonna
there you go.
The companies, because if on board I want to just sleep and I don't mind and I want to just arrive.
Yeah.
We are for a short flight of 2 hours.
Yeah.
If I go a flight of 10 hours, maybe it's a bit different. But sometimes with the same flight.
If it's 2 hours.
Sometimes it's the same flight because I pay Alitalia 200 euro. I say, okay, what you gonna offer me on board? Nothing, because if I want a coffee, I have to pay.
Yeah.
For example, if I want, I don't know, water, I have to pay.
Yeah.
The same I have to do on Ryanair flight. Okay, I have maybe less space, but who knows? Because you have different aircraft. Alitalia. If I find the one is really close.
You have exactly the same kind of issue.
Almost the same service. So say, what's the difference?
Yeah. Well, that has developed a lot. For example, Iberia, they only had Iberia, and then they transformed. They also took Vueling, and now you have Iberia Express, that is supposed to be a low-cost company. Iberia Express, the service that they have is magnificent. Because what you're saying as well, because in Iberia, they give you something to it. I think if I remember correctly.
Oh yes, I flight from Portugal. I mean,
with Iberia, but
Morocco to Portugal, if I don't get wrong, with Iberia.
Yeah.
They can mean the food and something.
But if for a short flight, you don't really care about it. You don't really care about it. But that has what you're saying is that fight against different kind of airlines that has developed a lot into how the destinations have got contagion of that confrontation. And made part of their development as well. It's extremely important. Everything is a value web. We have an extraordinary model in our studies that is called tourism impacts, and in that model we try to teach the students how important the value web is, and how the actions of different stakeholders have consequences.
Yes, I think so. And also you have, I think in the mind of a customer,
a
client, you have to justify what you are paying for.
Exactly.
I know it's maybe you're just it's an illusion maybe.
Yeah.
It's like when you go in a restaurant.
Yeah.
I say, okay, I go in a Michelin restaurant and I pay 300 euro. I don't eat a lot, but I eat for the quality, for the amazing
for the experience.
Exactly. So if I have to choose, not a low-cost company, not an Airbnb, and if I go in a 5-star, and if I take another level of quality, you need to justify justify it.
Yeah.
You give it almost the same service.
Yeah.
For me, say, why I have to spend it?
Yeah.
That?
Completely agree.
Because my loyalty.
But that thing that you're saying about loyalty is extremely important. Why customers stay in a certain company for whatever the reason? Why do I stay with my electrical company instead with A instead of B? Loyalty has to do a lot. At the moment, for example, that bank destroys your loyalty, the first thing that we say, at least in Spain, is I go to another bank. That is very, very Spanish, for example. But this thing that you say, I want to tackle it here because then I think it's a good way to also round it off in a way. Have you been in Madrid?
Yes.
Have you been in the T4?
No. Oh, it might be, yes, I don't remember. Yes, but just flew.
If you were flying with Iberia, yes, for sure. Could be.
I think so.
Well, the T4 is we had the traditional three terminals in Barajas, and in the year 2004, I always use it as a kind of investment with very unexpected consequences. And the T4 was operative in the year 2004 in Madrid. And it was a huge investment. You know that in Spain we like to make huge investments just for the sake of it. And it was based on the idea that, that we needed to reactivate tourism. Tourism was, we have always eaten from the very sweet honey of tourism because we sell what we sell. But in a certain moment, we thought that we could reactivate tourism even more, specifically in Spain, specifically in Madrid, but also in the rest of Spain. And that was the prognosis. So Barajas has always been considered to be the gate to Europe from Latin America. All the flights that were coming from Latin America, normally speaking, they were stopping in Madrid, making transfer to other kind of destinations within Europe. So within this, the T4 was inaugurated. And at the same time, we had the crisis of Bavaria. This is very simplified. Of course, there are a lot of things in between. So the crisis of Bavaria was very much related to the fact that Iberia, in the year 2004, we're talking at the beginning of the low-cost companies, low-cost airlines. We had the first ones were Zambia, for example, and very short after we had Ryanair and etc. So it was not a low-cost company. That meant that what you were saying, if you have to pay 300 euro to go to London or 100 euro, you're going to choose, at least to give it a try, 100 euro to go to London. So that was translated, one of the things, not the only factor, but one of the things is that it was translated that Iberia had very few flights per day. But they had the great idea that the T4 was going to be only and exclusively for flights of Iberia. So that means that the T4 of Barajas was desert, was almost no one. There were also other companies from the One World, but it was mainly 95% Iberia. The consequence of that is that Barajas started to lose passengers very fast. And suddenly, El Prat de Barcelona became the first airport of Spain, which it didn't make sense regarding this idea of Barajas being considered the gate to Europe like from Latin America. Yeah.
So this was just stopover and then they started.
Exactly. But also you have to think that some people were saying, okay, I go to Barcelona because my flight is coming from Buenos Aires. I'm choosing Buenos Aires, going to Barcelona. I stay a couple of days in Barcelona, and then I go somewhere else. Yes. So El Prat became the first airport in Spain, and in 2013, some 9 years later, we had the record year for tourism in Spain. However, Madrid decreased their activity of tourism in 10.4%. There you go. Only in the city of Madrid. I'm not going to say to put all the blame on the T4, but it had consequences as well because of the crisis of Iberia, because it was a huge investment made in very good ideas and very good principles. But we also have to think that unfortunately Madrid, and I love my city, I really love the way we offer ourselves to the visitors, Madrid had a very poor city marketing. Barcelona not. Barcelona, we are still getting all the benefits from the Olympic Games of '92. Barcelona was, there is a very interesting report of this school that is about over-tourism in Barcelona. And it is mentioned that Barcelona, it was one of the things that made it different is that it was a city with tourism and suddenly it become a touristic city. And in Madrid, unfortunately, and that's one of the things that the entrepreneurs are really complaining of Madrid, but not from this government, but also from the government before this one, is that the institutions in Madrid have little communication with entrepreneurs. If you have little communication with entrepreneurs, and the government goes this way, not the municipality, because obviously they don't have competences at the airport, but the Ministerio de Fomento go this way, entrepreneurs go this way, and other people go that way, and we're supposed to agree to make Madrid more attractive for tourism. Now it's a little bit different in Madrid, and in fact that in Madrid, for example, we're saying that, oh, Barcelona is having all these problems with over-tourism, and we have quality tourism. We have quality and not quantity, but okay. Here we are, exactly. So this is a good example. Also, one little thing, because I think we're over time, but there is one thing that is also important, is when the name of the country is attached to the name of the airline. And with Egypt Air, for example, there were a lot of major catastrophes connected with the Egypt Air, and the association of the name of the country with the airline that has had catastrophes that also had consequences for the destination. But this is maybe a debate that is a little bit more concrete to follow. So yes, shit happens. Yeah, can happen, but still we have to do it. And some conclusions: the future of an airport is closely related to the past, present, and future of the airlines operating in that destination. For humble destinations, monetary-wise, an airline with problems might mean a decrease of the tourism rate, and that is killing for the destination, especially if the destination is dependent on that airline. It's very, very common sense. Huge investments require of a deep 3D analysis. That is one of the first things that most probably you are also seeing in your master, how much in depth you have to go with your analysis. Especially when you're a policymaker, I might say. And claiming that we need an airport or we need more infrastructure is not necessarily the answer for destination development. Of course it helps, of course it's necessary, but not always. Roberta?
No.
Pobrecita mía, poor of mine, I just, wow! But thank you very much to get in conversation with me.
No, está